It all started with a letter taped to our front door, just a plain white envelope with the HOA's logo in the corner. Inside was a notice that made my heart drop. The HOA president, Mrs. Callahan, had decided my 17-year-old daughter was breaking some community guidelines by, get this, babysitting in our own backyard. That's it. She was watching a neighbor's toddler on a sunny afternoon while doing her homework at the patio table. But somehow, that small act turned into the start of something much bigger. Mrs. Callahan wasn't just your typical HOA president. She treated the entire neighborhood like her personal kingdom, measuring grass blades, timing garbage bins, and now trying to evict a teenager for unauthorized business activity. At first, we thought it had to be some kind of joke. But she wasn't playing around. The letters kept coming. Then came warnings, threats, fines. My daughter was confused, scared, and honestly, just trying to help a friend. We tried reasoning with her. We asked for a meeting. We showed her that nothing in the HOA rules actually banned babysitting. But instead of listening, she doubled down. It felt personal, like maybe this wasn't just about babysitting at all. The pressure got worse. She even started showing up at our property line, taking pictures and writing things down on a clipboard. It felt like we were being watched, and just when I thought this nightmare couldn't get any crazier, there was a knock at her door. Not ours, hers. And it wasn't a neighbor. It was a federal marshal. No warning, no explanation. Just a badge and a serious look on his face. What happened next? Let's just say, it turns out Mrs. Callahan had a lot more to hide than anyone ever imagined. When the federal marshal showed up at Mrs. Callahan's door, the whole neighborhood went still. I watched from my kitchen window, my coffee going cold in my hands. He wasn't loud, but there was a seriousness in his posture. Like this wasn't the kind of visit you brush off. She opened the door in her usual stiff posture, holding that same clipboard she always had with her. But this time she didn't. Look in control. Her smile was tight. Her eyes kept darting behind the marshal, probably hoping no one was watching. But we were. Everyone in the cul-de-sac had stories about Mrs. Callahan. She was the type who fined a family for having wind chimes because they were too loud, and once threatened to tow a car because it was parked 2 inches over a line. She lived for the HOA rules and made a few up along the way. But the way she'd targeted my daughter felt different, obsessive, over the top. She'd even told one neighbor we were running an illegal daycare. I mean, come on. It was just one kid for a couple hours a week. My daughter wasn't even charging money most days. But we started piecing things together. She wasn't just writing up rules, she was keeping files. Like actual folders with names, dates, photos. My neighbor, Jake, who once got a citation for a garden hose being visible from the street, showed me a printed-out email she sent about our family. It had my daughter's full name, school, and even notes about who she was babysitting for. Things didn't add up. Why was she so focused on us? Why now? And why did a federal marshal suddenly care about the woman who cared so much about patio furniture color and mailbox shapes? Something was definitely going on behind the scenes. And we were about to find out just how deep it went. After the marshal's visit, Mrs. Callahan disappeared for almost 2 days. No walks around the block, no morning clipboard routine. Her curtains stayed shut, and the neighborhood group chat lit up with theories. Some thought it was a tax issue, others whispered about a lawsuit, and a few even joked she'd finally been arrested for abusing HOA power. But nobody really knew, and that silence only made everything feel more off. Meanwhile, things at home weren't getting any easier. My daughter, Emma, was shaken. She kept asking if she'd done something wrong, if maybe she had broken a rule without realizing it. It was heartbreaking to see a kid who had done nothing but try to help someone now feel like she was the one under investigation. I started digging deeper, not just into the HOA bylaws, but into Mrs. Callahan herself. Turns out, she wasn't just a volunteer HOA president. She was also connected to a small local company that managed several neighborhood associations in nearby. towns. And in some of those places, people had similar stories, made-up violations, constant fines, pressure to sell their homes. One man said his elderly mother lost her house after falling behind on HOA penalties that didn't even make sense. It wasn't just about control, it was about money. Then there was the babysitting angle. I found out the mom, Emma, was helping, had been warned too. She'd been told that hiring a sitter without HOA approval could result in a lien on her home. That's when it clicked. It wasn't really about my daughter. It was about leverage. At the same time, the Marshal's presence sparked another mystery. He hadn't come for the HOA, but for something personal tied to Mrs. Callahan. My neighbor across the street, who works in civil service, hinted that there might be an old investigation resurfacing. Something serious, something federal, but no one knew the details. Yet. A few days later, the energy in the neighborhood shifted again. Mrs. Callahan was back, but not the same. She wasn't wearing her usual pressed blouse or that smug, tight-lipped smile. She looked tired, distracted. No more power walks or clipboards. But the thing that stood out most? She stopped enforcing anything. No new notices, no passive-aggressive notes in mailboxes, no emails about lawn decor. It was like she'd just given up, or was waiting for something. But we didn't stop digging. I requested the HOA's financial records, which we were legally allowed to see as members. It took some pressure, and when they finally came, they were a mess. Payments that didn't match up. Vague entries labeled admin expenses. And weirdest of all, thousands of dollars paid to a consulting firm that didn't seem to exist. I showed them to Jake, who used to work in bookkeeping, and his face went pale. "This looks like someone's funneling money," he said quietly. At the same time, Emma started getting messages from other teens in the neighborhood, kids who had been told they couldn't walk dogs, mow lawns, or even sell lemonade without permission from the HOA. Mrs. Callahan had been controlling all of it. What we thought was her being nosy was something way deeper. It looked like she'd created a fake rule system, one that let her scare families, threaten liens, and fine people into silence. And when they pushed back, she made it personal. Then one night, just past 10 p.m., a black SUV pulled up outside her house. No lights. 2 men got out, one in a suit, the other in plain clothes, and they knocked. Not loud, but firm. I couldn't look away. She answered after a long pause. No yelling, just quiet voices. And then they stepped inside. We didn't see her again for the rest of the night. But the next morning, everything was about to change. Next morning, we expected some kind of fallout, maybe news of an arrest, or at least an emergency HOA meeting. But instead, the real shock came from a different direction. A certified letter showed up in our mailbox. Not from the HOA this time, but from a law firm. It was a cease and desist, directed at me. The claim? Defamation and harassment of Mrs. Callahan. They accused us of spreading lies, damaging her professional reputation, and inciting conflict within the community. I was stunned. While the neighborhood had been buzzing with rumors and questions, I hadn't posted anything publicly. No social media posts, no group emails, just private conversations, mostly with neighbors who came to us. Someone had been watching, us again. Someone was documenting everything and using it to flip the script. And then came the real twist. Jake, our neighbor with the financial eye, called me in a panic. He'd been looking deeper into that fake consulting firm. Turns out the business license was tied to an address 2 towns over. He drove there. It wasn't an office, it was an abandoned strip mall. But tucked behind the building, in a dumpster, he found shredded documents, old HOA forms, envelopes, and, get this, copies of fine notices with blank names. It looked like someone had been printing them in bulk, ready to customize as needed. Meanwhile, the SUV that picked up Mrs. Callahan? It wasn't federal like we assumed. According to another neighbor who works security, the plates were registered to a private investigation agency. So now the question wasn't just, what did she do? It was also, who was looking for her, and why in secret? And then, just when I thought things couldn't escalate more, Emma's school counselor called. Someone had submitted an anonymous report claiming she was engaged in unlicensed childcare and putting minors at risk. This wasn't just harassment anymore. Someone was trying to ruin my daughter's future. I knew then that staying quiet wasn't an option anymore. After the school report, I contacted an attorney. We gathered every letter, every email, and every photo we'd collected over the past few months. Emma's name being dragged into some fake child care violation crossed a serious line. And that's when the real breakthrough happened. Our lawyer discovered that the private investigation firm that visited Mrs. Callahan wasn't after her for HOA matters at all. They'd been hired by a federal agency to assist in a financial fraud investigation. It turns out, Mrs. Callahan had been using her position as HOA president to funnel community funds into that fake consulting company, one she secretly owned, under a different name. That's where the admin expenses had been going. After everything came out, the neighborhood felt like a completely different place. There was this strange quiet, not the tense kind we'd gotten used to, but the kind that comes with relief. For the first time in months, people started talking, openly, sharing their own stories without fear of being targeted. We learned that Mrs. Callahan had been manipulating HOA rules for years, using fear and fake violations to control homeowners and, in some cases, pressure them into selling below market value. She'd then refer buyers connected to her shell company. It was all about profit, hidden behind paperwork and authority. Emma bounced back stronger than ever. Once the school understood the situation, they apologized directly to her, and even invited her to speak at a student leadership meeting about standing up for yourself when you know you're right. She was nervous, but she did it, and she absolutely crushed it. That moment made me realize that while the whole situation had been unfair and stressful, it taught us both a lot about courage, community, and how speaking up really does matter. Our new HOA board is made up of actual neighbors now, people who care more about helping than controlling. They've rewritten several outdated rules, added transparency to all finances, and even held a neighborhood BBQ to bring everyone together again. Looking back, what started with a simple act of babysitting turned into something way bigger than any of us imagined. We didn't ask for this fight, but we also didn't back down. And in the end, the truth came out. So if you ever feel like something's off in your neighborhood, trust your gut. Ask questions. Speak up. Because sometimes, the person writing the rules is the one breaking them the most.